What is going down, everyone? It's time for the Hype, episode number 164, and we got a special one for you today. I'm joined by Chris from House of Jordans and the Card Ladder. If you guys haven't checked out the Card Ladder, you gotta check it out, cardladder.com. Some great information on data of sales and what's trending for single cards. It's a fantastic tool, and we have an absolute fantastic conversation about basketball cards with the draft coming up, with the basketball singles market going crazy. We talk parallels, we talk second year prisms, we talk Luka. So stay tuned for that. But today is Immaculate Release Day. If you're watching this on Wednesday, if you're watching on the playback, every day is immaculate. So, but we got a special flash sale on Immaculate PYTs. You can save 15%, I know, which is crazy, by using the code MOJOMAN. Once again, that will only work on PYTs. Won't work on randoms, won't work on random groups, won't work on random numbers. But if you're picking your team, like if you're scrolling to see where your team is, you put in your cart, use code MOJOMAN at checkout, and you could load up. You can do as many teams as you want and save big for Immaculate. So take advantage of that while it lasts. It's going to expire very, very soon here. So load up on that. And also we have Upper Deck Series 1, and this is the guy. Alexis Lafreniere, the first overall pick, New York Rangers. Already getting some hype. We'll probably revisit this on the next hype show because we'll have some data, but this is a Young Guns, so if you're not familiar with hockey, every hockey hobby box of Series 1, which releases today, has 6 Young Guns in it. We do a case break, it's 72 Young Guns. We're pulling about 1 to 2 per case, but people are speculating that these may go for around $200 to $300, so we'll have to see. Big market team, big market prospects, and hockey is going crazy. So, so once again, use that code, guys. Check out Mojobreak.com. We're breaking everything this week. We've got National Treasures Baseball. We got Bowman. We've got clearly Donruss. We've got more Immaculates. We got more Dynasty. Lots of stuff going down. And without further ado, we're going to get into the interview with Chris from House of Jordans. Check it out. Chris, how's it going, man?
It's going well, man. Thank you for having me on. Definitely a full circle experience for me, as Mojobreak the Hype was maybe the first or one of the first 2 or 3 podcasts I ever listened to that had sports card related content. You guys are still leading the charge, years later. So it's great to be on, man.
I appreciate that, man. And I got a story. I was listening. It was probably in March that I was listening to the House of Jordan podcast. And if you guys haven't listened, you need to listen to it because there's just great information. It's a fun show. I think it was around March, right when, the shutdown happened, and you guys were talking about Prism PSA 10 Mahomes. And I went on there right away and I got one for like $1,500. So, and I mean, you guys kind of made me like 3,000 if I was to sell it. I'm not going to sell it, but I can't get one for that price now. So I was like, man, that was some good data right there.
Dude, wow. First of all, congrats. Smart pickup, smarter than me. See, that's the thing. When you make content, sometimes you'll have good ideas, but you just put them out there, but you don't act on them yourself.
Right.
That's happened many a time. But you also have plenty of bad ideas that you save yourself.
Exactly.
So that it evens out. But the Mahomes thing is really interesting because what happened with Mahomes, like, I think we in the hobby kind of, I've heard people call it like the Mahomes Effect. Basically, the premise of it being that something very unusual happens when a player has a really big moment and they make a huge accomplishment. And what happens is a lot of people who are holding their cards decide that means it's a good time to sell those cards because demand must be at an all-time high. And it is.
Mm-hmm.
Demand is at an all-time high. But the supply just temporarily overwhelms it because so many people have got it in their mind that now's a good time to sell. And so you get this really funny situation where it actually is a great time to buy a player like Mahomes right after he wins a Super Bowl MVP with a great come-from-behind victory, a great come-from-behind season. And you wouldn't think it would be that way. You would think that Mahomes' prices would just be at all-time highs right after he has this great accomplishment. And it works in the opposite direction, or at least historically it has. Maybe in the hobby we're going to change our approaches as this becomes more common knowledge. But, to be able to pick up a Mahomes like that in March, for $1,500 after the guy just had one of the historic seasons, and he's on the trajectory to be a GOAT. And now, that card, I think it's around 5K, 5,500.
That's crazy.
And that's down from its peak, right? I mean, the card had
Yeah.
peaked, I think, close to 8K. So, and who knows? But let's hope Mahomes wins another Super Bowl and his prices can come down
Right.
again for a little while. And then maybe I'll go get one finally.
Yeah.
I got a nice LeBron after the Lakers won, kind of recognizing the same pattern was happening where, LeBron, firmly cements himself in the GOAT debate, adds the 4th title, 10 finals appearances, but his cards go down. So we and it's, of course, it's temporary, or it's likely temporary, but we see this happen over and over again where opportunities present themselves.
I like that. More supply in the market than demand at the point, because it was just everybody was looking to sell. So driving down prices, especially on auctions. So it's a good tidbit of information. I actually sold an 0304 chrome refractor in March and a black refractor 0304 in March, and wish I didn't. So yeah, it was some, this kind of makes up for it, but not quite. So, but we all have those stories, and that's the fun of this hobby. So
black refractor LeBron, man, that's a big time card, dude. That's
I bought it like 2 years ago for 5K. And I wound up selling it for 18K, which obviously on paper is great, right? But you look at the prices now, and you can't look at that stuff, but it comes up on your eBay, and you're like, oh man, it's like I thought the pandemic was going to price those kind of cards out, So little did we
all did, man. We were all, or I can't speak for everybody, but I remember when COVID hit, I just pushed pause on everything. I wasn't selling, I wasn't buying. I was just like, man, this is a really scary moment for the hobby, for the world, obviously, but for sports cards too. It was amazing, unbelievable. If you would have told us, if I sat here, or if you told me, hey, a big pandemic is going to hit, but don't worry, sports cards are going to be absolutely red hot, I would say, what?
Right.
Are you? How does that work? But that's what happened.
It's crazy. I mean, I get like family members that, they know what I do, but they don't follow the hobby. And they're like, oh, you must be really suffering. There can't be a lot of people buying cards. And it's like, we're doing okay. Because that would be the first thing you would think that, wouldn't, it's almost like the travel industry. And I apologize to anybody that's in the travel industry. You would think that people wouldn't be spending money on cards, but it's the fact that people are at home and they're rediscovering their hobbies, and that stuff's right in front of them with social media. So, but at the time, there's no way you could have predicted it. So speaking of not being able to predict it, let's get into our first topic. The NBA kind of after the bubble, after everything happened, once, Ja and, Zion were out of it, it seemed like the cards kind of started to come back down. Like Chronicles is one that was like $800-900 a box, went down to like $700-600 a box. Singles were going for low, for less than they were. And then all of a sudden, I think the last 2 weeks, the cards have, like, I looked at your graph on Card Ladder for the Holo tray, and those things just shot up in the last few days. So what do you think is causing this?
Well, a lot of things, man, and it's a great question. It's the $1 million question. Whoever can solve this, riddle is going to do very well. So I'll give my opinion, but is just one person's point of view. I think in 2020, like we kind of talked about with the pandemic, we have seen a lot of new people come into the hobby who got very excited about the hobby, who saw meteoric price rises during their first few months in the hobby. And part of the reason for that was because we were in that speculative bubble of pre-NBA playoff pandemonium, which happens every year. As we get ready to go into the NBA playoffs, everybody, quote unquote, loads up on their bet for who they think is going to do great in the playoffs. But usually that period of time is short, and it's happening simultaneous with the end of the season. So like there's lots of distractions, but this time around we had like a 3-month window for basketball card collectors and investors to just think about nothing but their preferred player is just going to blow up and do amazing in the bubble and win the title. And so I think we had like a massive speculative bubble happen. And it was kind of like fueled by extreme optimism. This hobby is a very optimistic place to start with, but you had lots of people come back in they all were very optimistic. Their experience told them that prices just keep going up because that's all they
Sure.
had known since they came back in. And so they kind of figured this is just, a trajectory. We're just going to the moon, and that's just all there is to it. But also, you could kind of see that what ultimately was going to happen is players, everybody's still on the table when the bubble starts, but then you're going to get down to 16 teams that are the first round of playoffs, and then you're going to get down to 8, and then you're going to get down to 4, and then you're going to get down to 2, and then eventually you're just going to have one champion.
Right.
And we saw the sports card market kind of whittle itself down in terms of enthusiasm for players following that sequence. So like when there were 16 teams left, Luka, Giannis, all Kawhi, everybody was super hot. Okay, Luka gets bounced in the first round, Giannis gets bounced in the second round, but the hobby's still Kawhi gets bounced in the second round, but the hobby's still like clinging to who's going to be that breakout superstar. So like we see Tyler Hero start going
Right.
crazy because he had like one huge game. I mean, the guy was the youngest player to ever play in the NBA Finals, like, which cuts both ways. Like, number one, it's very impressive, but number two, don't set expectations so high on the youngest player to ever play in the finals, who was
Yep.
coming off the bench until the playoffs began. So I think we as a hobby got very exuberant, and then when our players got bounced, all of a sudden reality kind of smacked us in the face a little bit, and we had to cope with that and deal with that. But if you look at it from a percentage, so like we were seeing huge absolute dollar swings. So like Giannis's prison-based PSA 10 got up to like 7K, came all the way down after he got bounced to 3,500. So it lost half of its value. But what's amazing about that is if you look at historical data, you will see that the same trajectory happened to him last year after
Mhm.
he got bounced from the Eastern Conference playoffs. He lost about half of his value again. And then, but at that point in time, we were talking about going from like 800 to 400. And
Right.
yes, that's right. Going into last season, Giannis's prison base was a $400 card, and now it's a $3,500 card. Seems like it might be creeping back up to 4K. So like I think we had a lot of exuberance. I think we got hit in the face with reality a little bit. I think that's a big thing. And I also think like as we become more and more, investor dominated, and collectors and investors now like occupy this space together. Investors are people who are looking to act efficiently. They're looking to move quickly in some instances. And so that's going to, cause more dynamic movements in the short term than what we usually
And
see.
the honest thing makes sense to me if you look at the pop report, which some of the stuff that doesn't make sense to me is the Luka. Or Zion. I mean, obviously there's still the rookie hype behind Zion and Ja, but if you look at the pop report, and I'd advise anybody that's listening to this to look at the pop report on the Giannis, and you're like, okay, well that makes sense. I mean, you're getting numbers of base that are less than silvers of newer product, right? So that makes sense to me. But I worry about like some of these numbers that the second year Lukas are bringing in. I mean, I think I saw a tie-dye second year Luka sell for almost 4K, and I'm just thinking, are people confused that this is the rookie card, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't, it doesn't make sense to me. But it's been going on for like 4 or 5, I mean, the entire year that everybody's been buying the second year Luka cards. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, is this just such a dynamic kind of player that he's kind of approaching LeBron status already in the hobby?
Fantastic question. No, I don't think he's approaching LeBron status. But I would use a different player as his benchmark, a player from a different sport. I think like LeBron is so solidified with accomplishments, Jordan, Kobe, and basketball collectors historically have put a really big premium on rings and MVPs and statistical record holding and stuff like that. I think Luka's best case scenario from how collectors are approaching him is Mike Trout. They want to see Luka as a guy who doesn't need all of the accolades in terms of winning championships and stuff like that. They want to treat him as this statistical anomaly that is just kind of we're gonna permit him to break the rules, and if his team wins, that's great, but we're going to be really high on him anyway. And in fairness, like a big part of it too is the expectation that he will win titles. Bill Simmons his podcast has become a Luka hype fest in many ways. He recently said, Luka's going to be a top 10 all-time player, and if he stays healthy and things go well for him. It's like when you have that much hype surrounding a guy, and then he's also, depending upon the sports book you look at, he's the favorite to win MVP. So like the hype for Luka, the Mojobreak, the hype. We're talking about the hype.
Yeah.
The hype for Luka is at an all-time high right now. It's unbelievable how hyped he is.
I get what you're saying. I feel like the unicorn was like people tried to do that with Kristaps, right? Mm-hmm. And it's ironic that they're on the same team now, but it seems like Kristaps wasn't the guy because everybody, I mean, you remember how crazy everybody was for Kristaps rookies. And then, he had some injuries and stuff like that. And I think those people kind of went to Luka and 10 times the amount that were collecting Kristaps, right? So,
yeah. And the other thing too, man, so that's a great comparison. And it is funny that they ended up together now. You're kind of like a past and future thing there. But the other thing is that the hobby is so complex with products and parallels and variations and inserts and players to collect and prospects that for a lot of new people, I think just sticking to like one or two prospects like Zion and Luka, maybe you could sprinkle Trae Young and John Morant in there, and then sticking to just the key products, Prism, Select, and Optic, that really narrows the field of relevant cards that they're going to focus on. And so then you do end up seeing something like a Luka tie-dye, you get a mind-boggling amount of money. But if you say, well, their scope of the cards that they're looking at, they're seeing, rookie Prism Blue PSA 10s do like 30K or, in that range. Right. And then they're thinking, 4K is a great price, and Luka only has 2 years of cards and et cetera. So I think like that kind of helps explain it too, is that people, as they come back to the hobby, they really have a temporarily restricted field of cards that they're focusing on. But I think it will expand eventually as people dig in and they start to look at, more products and see that there's a wide variety of stuff out there, especially like the last couple of years.
I've got a hypothetical question that we've talked about on our show before. What do you think it would do to the market if eBay put in something that showed the card was actually paid for? Do you and then to follow up on that question, what percentage do you think of those auctions don't get paid for? And obviously that's just a wild guess, but what are your thoughts on that?
First of all, terrific suggestion. I am 100% behind that. I think it's remarkable that we function without a feature like that.
Right.
So first of all, if eBay did that, it would go two different ways. In one sense, it would increase trust in the marketplace, which would be good. That would increase people's confidence in buying cards, and it might lead to more sales. The other direction it would go is it would expose a lot of sales that never get consummated.
Right.
And suddenly things that, look like they are selling quite a bit and for tremendous amounts of money. And then it turns out that only some percentage of those sales ever actually are consummated. So there would be two different effects, and I don't know what way they would level out. But let me tell you this to answer the other question, which is what percentage of stuff on eBay do we really think is getting paid? It's another $1 million question you present there, and I try to think about that a lot, because one of the things we do with Card Ladder is, so we track over 5,000 cards right now. Every night, myself and another researcher, we have to manually approve every single sale of every single one of those 5,000 cards. And that oftentimes, like last night there was a lot of sales in the hobby yesterday. We went over thousands of sales. Most sales are really easy. They fall in line with the pattern of the market and stuff like that. But we get sales coming in that are out of step with the market or raise some other type of red flag. Maybe they're coming from a low feedback seller, something like that. And so we investigate further. And, there's things you can do to protect yourself that we do to exclude sales from the database. Like one thing we would look at is bidding history. And, I saw a Charizard came in last night that ended well above market value. And what do you know? You open up the bid history and it's 2-0 feedback bidders going back and forth against each other.
Right.
Okay, so like that's an easy exclusion. And then another really nice trick that you can do if you're kind of trying to sort through sold listings and figure out what's what is check and see if there are cards currently available for sale on eBay for cheaper than what this one
Right. That's a
allegedly
good
sold
point.
for. So that's another method that we routinely use when something sells like really high and it raises an eyebrow. Okay, let's go look on eBay and see if other copies of this are for sale. And if there's 3 other copies for half of the price of what that card just sold for, there's no way that we would trust that as a reliable indicator of the state of the market. And if you ever want to see it, you can just go to the news feed on Card Ladder. Every day we publish a list of every sale we exclude. And it could be a good way to just, for somebody who's new to the hobby or something, to just like take a look at those and like, this is what bad data
Yeah.
looks like. And so given that, we exclude on any given night, these are just ballpark numbers, but anywhere from maybe 15 to 20 sales, and we
Okay.
look at thousands. So on a nightly basis. So it's a relatively small percentage in our judgment of bad data, but in all fairness, if it's a close call, we generally err on admitting the data into the database and allowing people to kind of make up their own mind. We will only remove a sale from the database if it's egregious, like clear red flag BS going on. So that's kind of the way I would answer that question empirically. And it's not
How
very.
many of those, and I'm not throwing shade at these guys, but how many of those are from the 2 major consigners?
So,
Which
yeah,
isn't there. Let me preface this by saying it's not their fault. A lot of
no,
people throw their name out there as if they're doing it. It's not them. It's usually the person that's got the card up for sale, having maybe a buddy or two bid that card up.
it's a terrific question, and that your point is spot on. That they do such transaction volume that they don't have monitors on every auction. They do thousands of auctions,
Right.
yeah, you can get bad actors in there who are manipulating their own cards. Now the most flagrant obnoxious shilling doesn't come from either of the 2 big auction houses, but it does come from one of the smaller ones. And it's almost to the point where, like, when I see that seller show up with a sale, I'm just like, this is probably BS. Let's go take a look.
Yeah, right.
But the 2 big ones, there's useful information I could probably impart here that I'm sure but maybe not everybody in the audience does. The first one is PWCC. And what's nice about them is they have their own auction database on their pwccmarketplace.com website. And their stated policy is that if an item does not get paid for, it gets removed from the PWCC auction archive. So especially with high dollar items, we are frequently cross-checking completed eBay sales against their auction archive to make sure that the item was paid for. So that's a nice feature that they have. But the downside is that very recently they switched their bidding to all private. So now we can no longer see the feedback score of the bidders. That change happened a week or 2 ago. So that's unfortunate. It was nice to be able to identify when you have low feedback bidders going and making high bids on these auctions. And I hope that they change that policy back. But in fairness to them, that just puts them in line with Heritage and Golden and the other auction houses that also have very little transparency. So like that's something to keep in mind with them. And they also have a rigorous enforcement policy. If somebody doesn't pay for items, they are quick to ban you for life. So
you'll never be able to show bid another one or whatever you're doing.
Crafty people can probably get around it, and they probably do, but the penalty is severe, especially just for a normal collector who has buyer's remorse or something. Like you don't want to try that with any of the big auction houses because they'll put your name on the do not permit to bid list quickly.
Sure.
So it's good to have the strict policies. I think we could do better. But when you get into the weeds of it, there are ways to get close to the truth of what's really going on in terms of whether stuff's getting paid for ultimately. And even if it gets paid for, that doesn't fully answer the question either, right? Like
Right.
sometimes
Exactly.
people are defensively bidding on their own items because they own 5 copies of it and they're
Exactly.
looking forward to seeing a high comp. So it's just better to always be vigilant, I suppose.
I know it always goes back to the story, and I think I've said this story like 15 times for people that have listened, so they're like, "Oh, this story again." Is the Buyers Club for the Prism Silvers back in 14-15? That there was rumors that 10, 20 guys bought up a bunch of Karl Anthony Towns silvers at $10, $15, what the market was then, and then they basically just bid on each other's and just exchanged money back and forth until the card was like $200-$300. So obviously that wouldn't sustain the whole market to where we are now. It may have just maybe gave it a jump start, but you could see if you're analyzing markets that kind of stuff could very easily happen with maybe even 2 or 3 people, let alone 10. So one more question that just kind of was on the Twitter this weekend was the Beckett slabs. I don't know if you've seen those, the LeBron Prism Beckett slab with the fake. So basically it looks like a legit Beckett slab, but I think the only thing that's different is the serial numbering on the slab itself, the patent pending. What do you think about that? And is there any way we can protect ourselves as collectors from not buying one of those fake slabs?
That's a huge issue right now. The hobby has weathered similar storms. It's before my time, but there have been instances of fake PSA slabs. PSA has gone through several generations of holders in order to develop the technology and the holograms and everything else to protect their newest slabs from counterfeiting. So there is like a blueprint to how to remedy this type of situation that PSA has already established. So it would be great if BGS did that. And honestly, it'd probably be a boon to BGS's business because everybody's going to go and reholder their cards. So they're going to make a boatload of money, as I presume PSA probably did pretty well, having everybody reholder their cards once they introduced the new anti-counterfeiting measures to their slabs. So we've been through it before. We've weathered the storm before. There was a comment on Twitter from BGS that was a little bit less than inspiring on the topic. I think basically the advice, the bottom line was buy wisely, which we as collectors want to hear more than that. We'd like to, okay, but what anti-counterfeiting measures are being taken here? So I think BGS has an opportunity to remedy the situation here and introduce some new technology to further enhance the security of the slabs. Like you said, there are indicators that are helpful. So you can look at like you said, the patent text at the bottom. If the dot is missing, then that's a big red flag. The other one that has proven helpful, although I'm not 100% sure that it's true in all cases, but if the label within the slab, if it's a silver label or a gold label, it should have small perforations around the edge of the label. And so the counterfeit one did not have those perforations, and the authentic one did. And to me, that has been the clearest tell. That's a very easy one to spot. So if you're looking at a BGS slab and the label inside of it does not have the many perforations, and they're very small, but they're visible. If it doesn't have the little perforations, that's a red flag. I'm not saying that's definitive of anything, but if you do have the perforations, it seems that the counterfeiters have not replicated those. And you start to think, why are like the LeBron that was in the counterfeit slab? It's not like a super high dollar card,
right?
And you start to think like, I believe this photo was taken in China. And you start to think, is this a symptom, perhaps, at least in part? Obviously, we don't want to give excuses or a pass to counterfeiters, but is this a symptom maybe of the really slow turnaround times? And these guys are just like, we just need our cards and slabs. And in a couple guys were joking, not to make light of the situation, but what if Prism stuff grades well straight out the pack. What if somebody sent that LeBron to BGS and it got a 9.5 anyway? It wouldn't be unfathomable. And so you think, and you're like, hey, are there ways that like we can systemically address this problem to remove the incentive to want to counterfeit. Now, the counterfeiters, these are disingenuous fraudsters. So maybe there is no way to push them off of doing that. But improving turnaround times, maybe that would alleviate some of the burden for wanting to get these cards into slabs. That's just a wild speculation. But there's room for improvement in grading. And I think now we're going to need to see some strides taken from BGS. We're going to need to see some anti-counterfeiting measures installed in the slabs, and everybody's going to be checking their BGS slabs as they should. Hopefully this is a very limited situation. But as always, stay vigilant. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this topic, man?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's kind of along the same things. I mean, one of the things that come to my mind is that, did they just start with a lower end and they're going to kind of start working their way up with stuff? And I mean, also, is the card real? I guess that's my other thought is, if they start making prism based cards, then we got a bigger, serious problem as well. So, so I mean, one thing I always try to look at, like the basics is the feedback when I'm buying a card like that, see what else they're selling, negative feedback. I try to buy from guys that have a lot of feedback that they may not want to necessarily put their reputation on the line. They got a lot more skin in the game. That's what they do is maybe one of their main point of their business. Yeah, I mean, I like PSA specifically, like personally, so I kind of tend to go that route. I just like the way their slabs look. I've kind of turned when I got back into the hobby in 2010. I was like, PSA, I like BGS. But after like having a lot more PSA stuff, I'm like, I like PSA so much more. All the slabs look the same. The coloring's the same. They go into the binder, and the holder's the same. So I'm a PSA guy. So.
Yeah. And that's, I agree, man. I went through a similar thing. When I came back, I loved BGS, and then now I've started to really gravitate to the look of the PSA. And also, it's they don't have the inner sleeve on most of the cards in PSA, so the card can be seen more clearly, which is I've come to really appreciate that over the years too. So yeah, man. I mean, the point of grading companies, among many other things, is to be an authenticator and to assess a technical condition to the card. If we have to start like authenticating the authenticators, we've got an issue. But eBay has.
We laughed at that Mike Baker thing that came out, but that actually,
what timing? What timing? For
I know, right? Hey, maybe that's the thing. Maybe Mike Baker's faking ones. And be like, hey, that's the business model.
You always do want to follow the money, right? Who benefits? But the only other thing I would say is that if you look at sneakers, like when sneakers are bought and sold on eBay, collectible sneakers, now their policy is they all get sent to an independent third party that eBay has approved. The third party authenticates them, and then they get shipped to the collector or the person who's buying the sneakers.
Similar to a stock act, right?
Yes, exactly like that. So maybe something like that is going to be happening with sports cards in the future if our grading companies can't figure out a way to, tighten up and instill the proper level of confidence that their slabs are not being counterfeited.
Which makes me feel bad because I buy shoes from StockX to wear, and I get it, and it has the little green verified thing, but you obviously can't wear it with it on. But it kills the collector part of me to cut it off. You know what I mean? Like I just ruined this. Like I can't go wear my Jordans or my Yeezys out with the green thing hanging from it. So got to cut it off. So
True. I suppose that's kind of like cracking a card out of a slab or something like that. I guess.
Right. Yeah, but I guess you don't wear a card. I guess in a sense. Yeah, exactly. They'll find a way. I think Gary Vee said rappers were going to wear gold chains with like Jordans and stuff. I haven't seen that happen yet. So, I mean, but he did predict a few things. I mean, I think he was saying when he was going to buy all those Giannis's at $200, and then obviously those are crazy now. And he said, I don't know how many percentage are sneaker flippers that are in this hobby now, but he did predict that in a sense. So I know people like to rip on Gary Vee, but it seems like he does have a little bit of a insight on this, what's coming up next in this hobby.
No doubt about that.
So, but let's get back into some basketball talk. This may be a hard question to answer, but if you had $5,000 to spend on one card right now, what card would it be?
I collect Jordan, and then recently began collecting Luka. to way too much of a great extent.
Right.
uh, but when that's the thing about the hobby, man. We do a lot of things irrationally, and I have way too many Luka cards. So if I had 5K, I would go and pick out a really nice Jordan. It's a fun question because like I recently within the last month I did buy a card that was right in that 5K range. So I literally did this. It was the 97-98 one of a kind Stadium Club parallel for Jordan. It's serial numbered to 150, which in 90s terms is, the equivalent of being serial numbered to like
Yeah,
10 in Panini era
exactly.
terms. So it's a very it's a super rare card. And I went and I bought that. I mean, if I'm going to spend a substantial amount of money, like that much money, I would really like to go for a dream type of card, like one of those cards that take me back to childhood, which Stadium Club from 97 does for me, Jordan does for me. So that's the type of stuff that I would go, is just stuff that I'm going to collect and I'm going to put in my PC and keep for a
Sure.
long, long time, so I would go for something like that.
Yeah, and I like that idea too. I mean, I buy some of the new rookies, but I tend to, if I'm investing, I tend to go with guys like that are proven, and you may not get the gains you're gonna get with Luka or Giannis or Trey or any of these guys, or Bol for that 1 week. But but it's something that you could feel comfortable with and show off, and majority of people that don't collect cards are gonna know who that is. So
Totally. And I know that's a boring answer. But from the same token, like to me, it's not like man, when I get Jordan mail days, man, I'm over the moon. So if you can find that player that you love to collect, or that set, or whatever, is as great as it feels to see cards that you own go up in value, which is amazing. And it seems like everything in the hobby has, like, nobody has not been a part. Like I was looking at DeMar DeRozan's Topps Chrome refractor chart the other day. That his card has gone, his PSA 10 has gone from $200 to $1,600 this year. I
jeez.
mean, it's hard to find a player who just hasn't exploded this year. But even with that being said, even if you weren't seeing the gains, if you can find that player, that card, or that set that you like to collect, and it just makes you just as happy owning that card and being able to show it off on social media and claim it as part of your collection, to me, that's even more rewarding, or at least it's on the same level. So, especially when you're spending a big amount of money like that, like that's maybe not a bad frame of mind to have.
Absolutely. I didn't expect you to say like the LaMelo Ball 101 from Draft Picks Prism. So. I figured you'd go towards the Jordan. So,
Sure.
but maybe if we got like Mark Wahlberg's kid on here, he might be like, LaMelo 101. So,
Right.
or Mark Wahlberg himself. Who knows? But speaking of that was a good transition into our next topic. And I don't know if there's an answer onto this, but how do you navigate NBA collecting on a budget?
Oh man, is it even possible these days?
Right. Exactly.
Is it?
Send it
But it
in
is.
the no purchase necessaries, I guess, maybe.
Yeah,
Win
right.
free contest, retweet contest. No.
Yeah, right. Go follow a bunch of people doing giveaways, and that'll get you started. There's product available out there that is relatively affordable. So, and I know because I'm always looking for stuff that's, okay. So back in 2018-19, back in the day, Prism hobby boxes were $200 to $250 for basketball upon release. Okay, that's a reasonable range for a box. So this year, when 2019-20 hoops came out, it was in that price range. Now I'm talking about personal boxes that I would break myself or whatever. Buying into a break is different. That's one of the virtues of having group breaking, is that we can participate in high-end products that we otherwise wouldn't be able to. So, but what I'm talking about is buying personal box to break for myself. 2019-20 hoops was in that price range upon release. It's probably more now. I'm not sure what exactly it's going for right now. Clearly Donruss recently came out. People are maybe hot on it, maybe not, but I know that's kind of in the $300 range. Like there are products that you don't have to pay like a ridiculous retail markup for. Like it pains me to know that a blaster was $20 on the shelf at Walmart and now it's 150 on eBay. Like I hate that. But like with hobby, you don't have to deal with that. Like everybody's getting hobby at the same price. So you can get like some decent hobby boxes, like 2020 Donruss football. Those hobby boxes are like in the 200 to 250 range. I know I'm going outside the sport here, but like there is affordable stuff to stay in that price range. And the reason why these boxes go up in value is because the contents are valuable inside. So
Correct. Yep.
like that hoops box, we got out of it a Zion rookie, a Morant rookie, a Curry high voltage, graded them all with PSA, got 10s on almost all of it, which is often the case when you're ripping your own stuff. And it sometimes is the case, I should say. I've had mixed results, but we got really good grades. The box, more than paid for itself just from getting the cards, grading them, and getting them back. That's a great way to do the NBA on a budget. And I've seen guys have tremendous success starting from scratch, coming in, buying up all the cheap singles on eBay that they can find of young prospects who, will obviously have a little bit of excitement behind them as the season starts. And if you just time it right, you just go pick up a bunch of prospects, spend a couple $100 and pick up dozens of, some of the like Siku and, Hero would have been a good candidate for this before he went crazy. His market went crazy. Bol, like Gary Trent Jr. Like there's lots of these like rookies who can have moments. And so if you just kind of strategically say, hey, I'm going to go pick up a bunch of their Prism and Optic and select rookie cards, I'm going to grade them, send them off the PSA, make sure that you're sending off ones that are worth grading. Obviously I've seen a lot of people get a leg up in the hobby by just doing 1 or 2 rounds of like very strategic buying singles, grading them and flipping them going into the season, or waiting until a player gets hot and then selling them. And then all of a sudden you're working with a little bankroll and you can start, climbing the ladder, as they say, and picking up some of the bigger cards.
Well, that actually is a smooth transition into, let's talk about the card ladder. I was navigating it today. I was actually mad at myself for not using it until today, because I do kind of the same stuff, and that'll like help me buy stuff. So let people know how the card ladder works and what the benefits are.
Yeah, well, so we have a free version of the site and we have a pro version of the site, but the purpose of them both is the same. On the one hand, we provide articles and a content feed that, puts a spotlight on great podcasts, and we have authors who write stuff for us. That's available for free to everybody. And then we also have tracking and database information on over 5,000 cards. You get a much more robust data set through the pro version of the site, but of course there's also a free version of the site that gives you a lot of great information too. The vision behind the site was basically this. I always wanted a way to communicate to people who were not in the hobby why I'm so excited about sports cards. And as much as I could talk, people respond really well to visuals. And so let's say that you wanted to learn about Tesla stock. You would go to Google first and you would just type in Tesla stock. And what's gonna happen? You're gonna see 3 things. You're gonna see a picture of the Tesla logo. You're gonna see the Tesla stock chart, and then you're gonna see a little excerpt from Tesla's Wikipedia page. And that's the same thinking behind the 5,000 plus card profiles that we have on Card Ladder. Except instead of looking at a company's logo, you get to see a big, beautiful picture of the card. Instead of looking at its stock history, you get to see its sales price history. And if you're on the free site, you get to see 3 months worth of data, which is exactly what eBay lets you see. If you're on the pro site, you get to see the all-time sales history, which like researchers, including myself, have taken countless hours researching and digging up those sales and constructing them into a profile. So we think it's very valuable information to be able to, if you're looking at the 2003 Topps Chrome LeBron PSA 10, to be able to see what it sold for 17 years ago. Like, we think that's cool data.
Oh, wow.
So
you can go back that far?
You can go back to 2003, 2004 if you want to. So it just set the graph to all time. So there's the graph, just like you would have if you were looking at the Tesla page from a Google search. And then we also have like a Wikipedia style footnote section where if you go to the bottom of any card's profile, there will be a link to Cardboard Connection teaching you about the set that the card comes from if you want. Oftentimes we'll link to Trading Card Database too, so you can look at the checklist. And if content creators have discussed the card or the set, we try to include links to content creators there as well. So there's like a wealth of information as deep as you want to go. If the card is graded by PSA, you can click to see the PSA pop report. And then we also auto generate pop report numbers that update every day, whether it's PSA or BGS. And then there's also an eBay link, so that if you see a card that you like, you can click the eBay link, and it will take you to eBay using a custom tailored search that one of our researchers wrote. So it will take you to the card that you want to buy, and it won't just take you to, the wild west of eBay that it is.
Yeah, you might end up buying some breaks or something somehow instead of getting a LeBron card.
Right, exactly. So
or
that's
actually,
like
nowadays you might buy a bowl that had LeBron on there on the listing, right? I mean, that happens as well.
Shadow card. Right. No,
So.
exactly. So, and then if I may just and then the backbone of the site is the integrity of the data set, which is like my point of pride that I take very, very seriously, is that every sale, before it appears on a graph and before it appears in the list of the sales history, because you can click and you can look at every single sales point if you'd like to, every sale is vetted and approved by a human being. That doesn't mean that it will be perfect. Will we let in bad sales that didn't get paid for? Yes, we will. Mistakes will happen, but we do our best to make sure that whether it's a sale from 2005, and we just have to use our intuition to say, does this line up with what the market looked like? And there are lots of ways to do that. You can compare cards across different grades and stuff like that over time and see if the trajectories all are moving together. But the bottom line is that the integrity of the data set, the data that people are looking at, that it's as reasonably reliable as possible, is something I think is like a really important feature to the site. And
that's very important. I use Terapeak, which is just madness to try to find. I mean, I think it only goes back a year, but now that I know that there's this, especially on like LeBron and stuff like that, this is what I'm going to use, because it's like trying to dig through Terapeak. I mean, the data's there, but it's just, and I'm sure it's just jumbled and all put together there. So
it is. But Terapeak's a great resource because that's provided by eBay itself. So whenever we need to double or triple check a private offer accepted or a best offer accepted to make sure that the number that we're pulling lines up with eBay, Terapeak is the source we go to. So there's just no way around it, man. To piece together the data puzzle, you need to use a lot of resources and above all, wisdom and common sense. At the end of the day, we just have to, and that's one of the things that's great about the hobby, man, is that we all do. There's many smart people in this hobby who are very careful and prudent actors, and the more prudent and the more careful we all are, the more trustworthy of a marketplace we're going to have. So you can never be transparent enough. I feel you can never be careful enough, but at the end of the day, we do have to do things. We can't just sit there and just be frozen by fear or anything. We have to act, but it's very good to be prudent and careful.
Now, where can people find? Is it cardladder.com to find you guys?
Yep, cardladder.com will get you to where you need to be.
And then on Twitter at cardladder, correct?
Twitter at cardladder, and you can find me at House of Jordans.
Awesome. Yeah. So that'd be I would check it out right now, guys, that you're listening to this show that haven't already checked it out. There's certain cards I'm buying that I'm like, wow, this is eye opening. Like I was saying before the show, I'm thinking about buying some PSA 10s, Allen Iverson. So, which I don't have. I have the Kobe from that year, but I don't have the Iverson. And Iverson was one of my favorite players back then as well.
Yeah, man. Iverson, he's been another one of the beneficiaries of the hobby just exploding this year. But his Topps Chrome, the picture, where he's just like raging, just kind of like, it reminds me of the My House insert. The My House inserts from this year. It's got a similar pose, and I think that's an iconic card. I definitely see why somebody would want to add that to their collection.
Definitely. And before we let you go, I wanted to ask we got our draft. The draft's approaching. I believe it's this week. Any sleepers beyond the big three names in the draft? Any sleepers that you're looking at for the 2021 season?
So by the big three, I think you mean, and I am no draft expert, but I think you mean LaMelo, you mean Wiseman, and you mean Edwards.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, those guys are getting all the hype. It will be fun to see if LaMelo goes first or if he falls to 7th, like some people are saying. I think he's probably going to go first. People are very high on LaMelo. I heard somebody on one of the podcasts I listened to, I don't remember which one, somebody said LaMelo is like a bigger Trae Young who can play defense but isn't quite as accurate of a shooter. So
Huh.
if LaMelo lives up to that, he's going to be a hot commodity in the hobby. But those are pretty big shoes to fill. Trae Young averaged 29 and 9 last year. That's amazing.
Right.
Okay, but the sleeper might be Denny Avdiha, who is half Serbian, half Israeli. And the half Serbian part is really interesting because there are many great Serbian players in the NBA, or half Serbian players in the NBA. For some reason, that corner of the world produces NBA talent. Nikola Jokic is Serbian. Bogdan Bogdanovic is Serbian. Nikola Vucevic is either Serbian or he's from one of those countries up there in former Yugoslavia. Luka is half Serbian. So there's just the Serbian thing going on. And he's also,
I know he's been drawing a lot of comparisons to Luka. I mean, a lot of people are comparing him.
And I'll tell you, man, I looked at his reel, and I am no talent scout and I'm no talent evaluator. I'm just a guy looking at a laptop. But I looked at his reel, and his game looked crisp to me, man.
Nice.
He's a very crisp and developed player, and his fundamentals seem good. He seemed quick. He seemed big and strong. Now, people have said that perhaps he's going to be more of Ersan Ilyasova or a Hito Turkoglu or a Dario Saric. People have kind of put him into that camp. And that's probably a reasonable conservative expectation to set for him. Sure. So that's fine. But like if I had to pick a sleeper based on my limited, things that I've looked at, he seems like a pretty exciting player, maybe a guy who could follow in Luka's footsteps even, although for Lightning to strike twice like that would be pretty phenomenal. But I don't know, man. He looked pretty good from what I saw.
Nice. Now you guys have your podcast, House of Jordans. What episode are you guys on now?
Oh man, 40 something. But don't let the low number fool you, because we used to make 4-hour-long episodes that came out once a month.
So, and you guys would have the premiere where you were jumping into the chat and stuff like that. I thought that was awesome. Yeah.
Exactly. And then we've been on.
I thought you were going to say, I know it feels like it's like 160 or 170 or something like that.
Yeah, we've been around since December of 2018, but you have been around much, much longer. You guys are the godfathers of hobby content in a number of ways. Anytime, because Christina and I open a lot of wax, we don't get many one-of-ones. I don't even know. We've pulled maybe like 2 one-of-ones ever. Including a Nebula one-of-one we once hit of Jalen Hands from 2019 Prism. But nice. whenever we do get a nice card, Christina goes, one of one, and that's from C-Rad. Okay, that is straight up from C-Rad. So like, we've loved your content forever. I remember when you were doing the breaks with Bosa, and I think Gary Payton. I mean, you guys have done so much stuff, and you've like set a standard and a level of excellence in the hobby that, when a little podcast like ours comes along and just occupies this little niche within the Jordan collecting world, it's only because there was great content before us, like you guys. And not only do you satisfy the hobby content itch, but you also, your breaks are very rewatchable. Like before we buy a product, we go watch you guys break it to see if we want to buy it. That's why it's great that you guys have this catalog of all these breaks over the years. It's a lot of fun to just, it's a good way to waste a few hours and maybe not spend too much money, or at least do your research first.
Definitely. Well, we appreciate it. I think we're still small in this whole, podcasting land too. And I think the thing that that you guys have, and it's a passion, right? And you enjoy talking about it every day. You live it, and it just comes off easy when you love something, right? So, and I see that with your guys' show. So how, when you guys are putting together your show, is there somebody that's writing the content? You guys all kind of collaborate on that, or?
Oh, that's me being a madman. I would just sit there. I would think about content throughout the week, and then maybe like 6 hours before the show, I would type up a pretty elaborate. It first started as bullet points, and then it became a pretty elaborate script. And then on the back end, my brother is a film producer and a videographer, and he would take what we did and he would make it look good and make it more interesting, effects and stuff.
Yeah, I actually usually I don't even nowadays. Things been so busy. I don't even have a script. It's just topics and we just ramble, So, but I think that's what helps with, I like your guys' shows, but because the data's there. Sometimes I don't have the data written and it's just, we're just going back and forth. And as you said, Dan being the contrarian, which honestly, he is like that in real life a lot of times too, and I think that's why we mesh, is because he always has a different point of view than I do. And it feeds off it well, and it leads to better business decisions, I think. So one of us isn't like, I want to buy 100 cases, and he's like, well, I always buy 50, and meet in the middle. So
Very interesting. I'd never thought about the dynamic of the two of you in the business setting, and how it might be beneficial to have a more contrarian point of view. I mean, Dan is a highly entertaining guy. All his takes, whether I agree with it or not, his take is add flavor to the show that, quite frankly, there are no other content creators out there who have a Dan, who have any of you, but Dan is just a really, as they would say in talk radio, he's a unique property in the sports card podcast world.
Oh, he gets the most hate mail out of everybody. So we have a good laugh about it. It's like, this guy doesn't know anything. He's a blowhard. I think blowhard's been used several times. But he's just like, dude, we can't just like sit around a fire and just agree on everything, because then you're not including everybody's point of view into the show. So
100%. 100%. No,
and I see that with you guys too. You guys have that same formula, kind of, where you're not all necessarily agreeing on the same topics. So.
Yeah, Christina's a bit of a natural contrarian, and there's just bickering that happens among us anyway, just because we all have great familiarity with each other. But yeah, it makes things more interesting when you got a couple different points of view going, for sure.
Absolutely, and let's end it off with, I know we're going a little long here, but I want to ask, back to the basketball market. If we do have another widespread shutdown, which I hope we don't, because we all want to get back to a normal society, do you think the basketball market benefits from having another shutdown?
That's a terrific question, and I don't know, but I will throw a couple things out there. It's often overlooked, but The Last Dance played a pretty big role in helping to resuscitate sports cards after COVID hit.
Yep.
And there's no doubt that being trapped at home, not being able to spend money on going out to eat, not being able to spend money on taking vacations, not being able to spend money on going to events, concerts, sports games, no doubt a lot of that money got funneled into cards. And no doubt that the stimulus checks and the benefits that were provided to people, also a lot of that money got spent on cards. So if those factors reappear and suddenly people are receiving stimulus checks again, and they don't have any real world activities to spend money on again, there's a decent probability that that money is going to get put back into cards again. I could foresee that happening. But it's worth remembering that one of the things that played a role, I think, in reinvigorating the confidence in cards was the Michael Jordan documentary and the Chicago Bulls documentary, I should say. So that, will we have something like that again? Right. Maybe somebody will pounce.
I feel like that thing, obviously I'm sure it was highly anticipated, but to the casual, sport, hobbyist, it probably wasn't. But when it's the only thing on, all eyes are glued on it, right? I mean, I was hearing stories of people were like finding all 10 episodes and streaming them all week one. They found the illegal stream and they watched all 10 episodes in one night. I mean, it was just pure pandemonium. And then you had the Scottie Pippen cards that were going for triple the amount. Dennis Rodman, they were going triple the amount. I mean, it was just crazy. And then the bubble come right after that, and it was like we're right back on track.
100%, and look, a lot of guys in our age range may have come back to the hobby. Yep. I think eBay reported data on during the Last Dance documentary, they were seeing big upticks in money being spent on collectibles, including cards, seeking out Rodman, Jordan, Pippen, all these guys. And that may have been a taste of collecting that then brought people back in to say, well, what's the landscape like right now for sports cards? And honestly, as much as I love the 80s, which is when all the rookie cards of all these players who were featured in the documentary come from, the state of sports cards right now, man, is amazing. The way we have access to marketplaces like eBay, that we can just do international deals at the click of a button. And the level of quality of the cards is fantastic. The diversity of the selection of cards is just remarkable.
Yeah,
So
me and you would not be here if it was the 80s. So I
that's
wouldn't be able to break
that's
cards
what I'm
online.
saying.
You guys wouldn't be able to do the ladder or in the show, So, I mean, if you think about it that way, it's just accessibility too, right? So,
Yeah, so I could see people coming back saying like, "Man, this is a lot better than I remember sports cards being. This is fun." And checking out breaks, like breaking was another thing. I remember reading news stories and just seeing it visibly myself, looking at the viewer counts and participation in breaks. I mean, breaks were just on fire.
yeah,
And they provide a form of entertainment that when sports are not on TV, especially, can fill the void. So there are reasons to think that like our hobby can weather and maybe even thrive in a number of different adverse circumstances, including, God forbid,
and that's the thing.
another
I think people compare this bubble to the junk wax era, and I always say to people, it's like people are well invested in this era of cards. So, I mean, unless something catastrophic happens, people are not going to sell their $10,000 cards for less than what they paid for it, right? It's easy when you have a $20 junk wax card, just throw it away or put it in the attic and not think about it for 20 or 30 years. But when you're invested $100,000 in a portfolio of cards, I mean, $100,000 is extreme, but I don't think those people are just going to unload those for pennies on the dollar. So
It's a great point, and we have a safeguard against the junk wax proliferation that didn't exist in the 80s and the early 90s, and didn't really sink in until the late 90s, when you had the advent of serial numbering and intentional scarcity placed on
right,
items. So although we have a sea of parallels today, there's lots of serial numbered cards now, but and we have tons of cars being manufactured, no doubt about it. That provides an entry point for anybody, and you can come in, and because we have so many different parallels and different serial numbered levels of cards, you can go for those one of one logo man flawless type of cards. If you're at that
right.
level of the game, the top of the pyramid, you can go for a prism based PSA 10 if you're coming in at that, or a raw copy. And then there's something in between on every level for anybody who wants to get in. And having serial numbering is a tremendous safeguard against the proliferation of junk wax. And the reason why is because you know exactly how much was made,
Exactly.
and you're able to choose your spot in the market that you want to occupy based on the scarcity of the card. So it's a very different dynamic than back then. And plus, like you said, with the availability of marketplaces and communication and so many different ways to enjoy this hobby and express yourself in this hobby and be creative and all the rest, that obviously you and I are two people who are very bullish on the hobby.
Yep.
So I think many people feel that way. The bottom line that I would put on it, and the reason why I'm so bullish on the hobby, though, we can look at all these reasons and they're great and they make sense, but at the end of the day, collecting cards just makes me happy. And it
Exactly.
just makes my life better to have cards in my life, and to have the community of people that I know from cards, and to talk about cards, and to show them off on social media, have them in my collection, look at them when I want to. So that's kind of the bottom line for me, is like, as long as the hobby is fun and making me happy, it's probably doing the same for a lot of other people. And we probably have a lot of good things to look forward to.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great way to end it, man. This was a lot of fun. I can't believe we took this long to have you on the show. We'll have to have you come back on again soon, man. And so we'll definitely be promoting the card ladder, and I'm going to be using it now that like I said, I can't believe it took me so long to look through it. I thought it was amazing. So you guys check it out. Check out cardladder.com, as well as the House of Jordan podcast, which is a phenomenal podcast.
All right, that is it for the Hype episode number 164. Make sure you're subscribed to us here on YouTube at our Mojobreak Media channel, where we have all of our content. We do the Hype once a week live. We also have our football podcast called The Blitz, and we have a basketball one on deck, and just fun content gets posted there. And if you're into breaks, mojobreak.com, where everything is scheduled, everything is guaranteed. We do every type of break, whether it be a PYT, random, we do personal boxes. But if you're into sports, sports cards, you should be able to find something at mojobreak.com that you're into. And everything is broadcasted and broken live on YouTube. We're live 7 days a week, so check us out at mojobreak.com. And make sure you use that Immaculate code that we mentioned earlier in the broadcast. It is Mojo Man for the 15% off on Immaculate. Once again, Mojo Man. And it only works on pick your team style breaks. But for now, we'll see you next week on The Hype.